Let's talk about the Wolves, Wes.
Let's talk about the Wolves.
What a season. I think we got to say that. What a playoff run for Ant. Really cool to see that franchise invigorated. Really cool to see where they could go. But I think it's fair to say, Wes, on a lot of different fronts, there are some questions. So where does your brain go when you think about this team? When you think about what could come this summer, what you're looking at, what's the first thing your brain goes to when you think about what's going on here?
Don't overreact. You had an awesome season. It was a success. If you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you could feel good about the way Anthony Edwards played all playoffs. You could feel good the way that Karl-Anthony Towns showed up in that last game and towards the end of this series. But I know that there's questions about where does Cat fit in? Is this team viable? All these things. It's viable. Don't overreact. If you have to break up the team for money, then you have to break up the team for money. I'm not ownership, and nobody really knows what's going on with that ownership group, and they'll figure that part out, I guess, eventually. But I think just from a personnel standpoint, if you're Tim Connolly, the GM there, and you're still there next year, then I think you look at this as proof of concept that this works. Everything you built works. And then you ran into a juggernaut against Luka Doncic and the Mavericks, who are having a moment right now. And these games were still close. I know you got beaten 5 games. 4 of these 5 games were close. And you beat the team that you set out to beat in the Denver Nuggets. And I think if you just keep everything the way it is, you enter next season as a legit title contender. People will be betting on you to make the finals. You are in that inner circle of title contenders next year, despite the way you lost in the Western Conference Finals. And that's all you can ask for, right? Is a chance to be in that inner circle. And the Timberwolves are in that inner circle. Anthony Edwards is only going to get better. You hope that Karl-Anthony Towns can still get a little bit better, a little bit smarter on the court and all these things. I do think that there are things you have to worry about in terms of how you continue to build a team with 3 guys making $40+ million a year in this new CBA world. That's a real concern. When do you have to upgrade the Mike Conley spot, who had a really good postseason, but he's 36 years old? That's coming down the pike at some point. But that's not necessarily a this summer problem, even though you need to start preparing to answer those questions. Don't overreact to this, and I don't think that they will.
This is the question, though, I think, is that there is something that no other NBA team I can really think of, Wes, has had to go through. Like, usually when we see something involving ownership, it is the Suns getting an owner who wants to spend a bunch of money and trade for Kevin Durant and sign everyone under the sun and trade for Bradley Beal. Hi, Brendan. And owners that want to spend, and they want to, like, take the new sports car in their lot out for a joyride. Like, that is what happens. That is not exactly like that is not at all the situation going on in Minnesota. There is an ownership legal dispute. Like, there is courtroom drama going on here, right? Now, how much of this fans care about? We were talking about this pre-show. I don't know how much people really care about this, or like how interesting it really is. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It is just a fact that this is John Krasinski from The Athletic, has done great reporting on this. You should go read him at The Athletic and be smarter about this. The 3-year transition plan for Mark Lowry and A-Rod to take over from Glenn Taylor blew up in the spring. Taylor decided the teams are no longer for sale because he said Lowry and Rodriguez could not come up with the money to complete the transaction, which Lowry and Rodriguez do deny. I'm going to read a paragraph from Krasinski's Athletic piece that came out after the Wolves lost Game 5. Quote, "The two sides are now locked in a bitter dispute over who owns the franchise. A 3-person arbitration panel has been selected," league sources told The Athletic, "and both sides have filed briefs to be reviewed to start the process. It is unclear how long it will take to complete, but it could last till summer, which complicates the path forward from a team-building aspect. A compromise has gone nowhere, including at a mediation session in early May. Both sides are dug in on their positions. The hard feelings are only getting harder." On top of that, Tim Connolly could opt out of his contract and leave. This is just like a weird NBA. Woj, I know we posted this on our socials. Woj outlined like the power structure of NBA teams. This is like just the weirdest for a team that should obviously some tough financial decisions. The aprons introduced complications. This is just a really interesting wrinkle in a summer where you would think, okay, there'll be some tough choices, but can we upgrade on the Mike Conley spot and figure out something to do with him. I know we extended him, but like, is there a younger version of him that we could go and get? Do we do a Towns trade to get another wing in here and change out that salary slot and maybe give Naz Reid more to do and more emphasis on him, right? There's all these questions. This just like complicates like what is even possible, and that to me is what I'm wondering is like how aggressive can the Wolves be in pursuing where this can go, or do they just really run it back and like that's fine, but do they run it back just in part because of this?
Yeah, if I'm looking at this through rose-colored glasses, this could almost be a good thing. Because kind of going back to my point, I think you run it back. I don't think you make any major changes going into next year. And if there's an ownership dispute at the top of the organization, then nobody's in place to make any major decisions. And I kind of like that for a spot for this Timberwolves team. Don't make any major decisions. Run it back next year. See what this is. This is a title contending team. If you're a title contending team, you have a chance to win the championship if your matchups break right and certain things break right. And so, yeah, those questions that you're asking are legitimate things that this ownership group eventually and this front office eventually, whoever's in charge of it, needs to figure out. But that to me is a 2 summers from now question when Mike Conley's at the end of this extension that he signed, when you do start to get a little bit more expensive as Gobert and Cat and Anthony Edwards and their salaries go up a little bit more. You could figure that out. Heck, you could figure that out at the trade deadline if the season goes sideways a little bit at the beginning of next season. So, I think it's almost a good thing that they're having these problems because I do worry a little bit about them getting a little bit too creative and messing something up that clearly works.
Frankly, like the biggest question to me too is not even one that we can like really even see what they do with the roster. It's like, what does Ant do? Like, I feel like Ant, when we think about Ant and we think about how this ended, where it felt like he ran out of gas a little bit, ran out of juice. This feels like it's a situation where I want to see what he comes back next season and is like, okay, like this is the leveling up. Like it felt like he was skipping steps by getting to this point. And it turns out he's just not. It turns out the NBA like works a certain way maybe, and he had to like take this lump and it's that's maybe that just how this works and maybe for the better. But how does he level up is really the question, and that's like the thing where I don't know, I don't know. We're not going to know exactly what that is. What does he work on? Where does his conditioning level get to? I think the conditioning thing would almost be the biggest thing just because it felt like he did run out of gas, or maybe it's just pacing himself more in the regular season, which we see a lot of stars do. That's like the biggest thing, and it does come from Ant, right? And it also feels like on top of, maybe the Conley thing resolves itself, whatever, it also feels like their coaching staff's going to stay intact. As of right now, it doesn't seem like Mike Conley is getting hired for any of these open jobs.
Right.
Which is a huge coup for them, for considering how, when you read about that team, that he is so involved with the players, locked in with the players, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think if you're, I do think that there are things you need to do here. You're exactly right about Anthony Edwards. The conditioning needs to get better. And by the way, everybody's like, he's 22. He shouldn't wear out. Like 22 is still not your physical prime. Like 24, 25, 26, 27. Like you're in better physical shape at those ages than you are at 22, and he's getting there. And I told this story with Brendan on the last episode, but how he talked about doing his pre-draft workout with the Warriors, and Steve Kerr telling him, "Dude, you need to play harder. You need to work harder. You are not working hard enough. And if we're going to take you at number 2, which obviously they never got the chance to do because he went number 1, but if we were going to take you at number 2, we're going to need you to work harder." And Anthony Edwards, after that meeting, called up his trainer and said, "We got to change everything. We got to work harder. I got to get in better shape." Right. And so this might have also been one of those moments for Anthony Edwards where he just needs to work a little bit harder to get in a little bit better shape, and so that he can not finish a regular season, but finish a postseason, so that he's in shape enough not to play through the end of April, but to play to the end of June. And those are just different things. And I think, and the other part of it too is, can he get some ball handling help? So when we are talking about team needs, because the Timberwolves are going to have to make some decisions, right? Like Kyle Anderson is a free agent. They have some other, like I think Monty Morris is a free agent, if I have that right. They have, he is. So Monty Morris is a free agent. Kyle Anderson is a free agent. Jordan McLaughlin. Those are their free agents. Those key free agents. So they need some additional ball handling. I don't know that Anthony Edwards needs to find his Kyrie Irving necessarily, but they just to that degree. But they need to find something additional, especially with Mike Conley going into his age 37 season. They're just going to need some extra ball handling. There was too many times in all these games where it was either Anthony Edwards or Mike Conley on the court, and it was up to one of them to create offense. It would be nice if there was somebody else out there that can do some stuff on the perimeter. So I think you need to address that. I think you need to probably replace that Kyle Anderson slot with somebody cheaper. That's not an easy thing to do, but it's something that they're going to have to do.
Which also mandated by like the ownership thing. It's right. It's like it's both has to be like replace Kyle Anderson, who played for more in the Dallas series to his credit and played I think okay, but didn't really play for you the rest of the playoffs. Right, like didn't really matter the rest of the way. And then you can't pay that guy what a full mid level.
No, you're looking at something. You're probably looking at a minimum salary guy or internal improvement from a guy like Wendell Moore or Josh Minot or Leonard Miller, like these young guys that they have on the roster where you saw the Nuggets have to do this year because of where they are against the cap. So maybe that's something that Minnesota has to look at. Maybe you're not able to replace Kyle Anderson and go get that second ball handler. Maybe you can only afford to do one of those things, you know?
Which would you rather, if you're going to be able to get one, and maybe like one is more the veteran cheap option, one is like a lottery pick, a drafting or developing. Which one would you want more immediate help with if you're them?
The ball handling. Yeah, I think you could draft a wing and get lucky because what the wing can do is just bring size, right? Like size is size. That's an immediately transferable something from college or from wherever they're coming from to the NBA. And if that guy with size can hit some threes and play hard on defense, that player will have his rookie moments, but he'll at least have an impact. Where if you're picking where Minnesota's picking also in this draft, which is important to keep in mind, the idea of getting a guard who's going to walk in right away and do stuff, there's just not a lot of those guys, right? So I would rather go out and get a veteran guard who you know can handle the reins and be that secondary playmaker and do some things. Go get that guy who's a veteran who has proven it at the NBA level to some degree. Again, even if it's on the minimum, I don't know who's going to be out there, but you do need some help there. And then, yeah, maybe you just keep drafting wings that you're going to have to replace these other guys with eventually.
Yeah, even like positionally, I mean, he's played for them before. Tyus Jones would be someone that I think would make like sense for them.
If they can afford it. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's like because then you're getting into like you just run it back with Monty on a minimum because I don't think he's going to get more than that at this point. And then you're getting into names where it's like, am I excited about Reggie Jackson level guys, Kira Lewis like on a flyer? Like none of these guys, once you get to this level, I'm like super.
But that's what we're talking about.
The challenge.
It's not going to excite you, but that's sort of what we're looking at is a buy low option like a Kira Lewis. I don't know what Malachi Flynn gets in free agency. Something like that. Like Chris Dunn. What is he going back to Utah? I'm just looking at the list of free agents right now. It's not going to be anybody that gets anybody excited, but you just do need to find somebody that could just play that position. Maybe it is as simple as just bringing back Monty Morris on a minimum, and that's fine. Like he was hurt. I think if you bring him back on a minimum and he's healthy, that might be enough to solve your problem. That's why they went out and got him in the first place, right? I thought it was a good acquisition at the time, so maybe that's all it is.
Running it back would be entirely valid. Running it back,
yeah,
and betting on Ant and betting on Anthony Edwards' improvement and betting on that guy to improve would, I think, be an entirely valid thing. It would make a ton of sense. I think you would run into it's not the same, and they've accomplished more than the Kings did, but as a point of comparison, there is like the West is so challenging that like you could do that and it could be flying logic and process, and we could pick at it a little bit and it could still just be like, hey, you know what, the West is really good. We were a little less like our seeding was a little worse because Gobert missed a month with an ankle sprain, or Ant sprained his knee or whatever, and then it's like you just have worse luck and that happens. And like that's just the nature of the West. I don't think there's anything like they should be lobbying to get to the East tomorrow and be like, we'll clean up over there. It'd be great. Wes, I also found coming out of this, if I'm them, I think two things coming out of beating Denver and losing to Dallas the way they did. Number one, I think I wonder if they like beat Denver and like if they'll take a second, and I wonder what that meant like energy wise and how much that took out. I wonder
Well,
like how like because you beat the defending champs and you came back in Game 7, and that took a lot. Even just like emotional energy, I wonder what that took. In two, I wonder stylistically if Dallas just ultimately was just like a horrible matchup, and there's just nothing like there's some of this you just I don't know what you're supposed to do about that. And it felt like by the time Game 5 started, once Luka went off, yes, there were some moments where the crowd got back into it and they showed some fight. It also felt like they just didn't feel like they had it in them anymore at a certain point.
this team was constructed to beat the Nuggets, right?
Yeah.
And they beat the Nuggets, but that almost felt like their final boss battle. And that the Western Conference Finals, there was a little bit of a letdown from an energy standpoint. Like they did what they were constructed to do. They did the thing that they set out to do. They beat the Denver Nuggets. This is a team literally built to beat the Nuggets, and they did that. They accomplished their goal. The biggest problem is that there's 2 more series on the other side of that. So I think there is something to that. It did feel like there was a little bit of a letdown in that Game 1 in Minnesota, where that crowd was so amped, and they just did not come out with that level of urgency that you would have expected. And they end up losing this series in 5 games, and it never really felt like, outside of Anthony Edwards for the most part, that they can get up to the energy level that Dallas was already at. Dallas still had a huge goal in mind, and that's getting to the finals, where it felt like the Timberwolves kind of did the thing that they wanted to do. And then there was this like other bonus boss battle at the end, after the end credits, and they're like, wait, what? There's more? We got to do more stuff here? And that's kind of what it felt like to me.
Last thing, I'll just ask you point blank: how strongly would you consider scale 1 to 10 a Karl-Anthony Towns trade?
I think you have to look at it. I think you have to look at it and see what you can get for him. But I wouldn't. I would be trying to do it on the down low as much as possible, because, like I said, I still believe in this group. I think the Towns Gobert thing does work. I think defensively, what they were able to do against Denver is important. Like, the Nuggets are going to be right back in this thing next year. Like, the West still goes through Dallas. It's still or Denver. It's going to go through Dallas. It's going to go through Minnesota. Oklahoma City's on the rise. Like, all these other teams. So I don't think that you want to overreact too much. And if you do trade Towns, I don't think that Naz Reid is just a fill-in. Like, you can't just be like, oh, well, Naz Reid could just do what Towns does. Naz Reid gets a little bit of that backup quarterback benefit of the doubt stuff, where he can go 2 for 10 the way that he did in Game 5 and nobody cares. But when he does play really well, everybody wants to get tattoos of him. Like, that's backup quarterback stuff.
Me.
To a T. Towns
Wes,
is a
me.
better player.
I'm those people. I'm those
You
people. I drafted him 2nd overall in our draft. I don't regret it, but had a little reconsideration, after Game 5 didn't exactly go great.
But you do have to look at it, because you have these team needs that you're talking about, and you wouldn't be doing your job as a front office if you didn't at least explore it, right? So, how I've got a few Karl-Anthony Towns trades I want to throw at you, but how much would you consider it before?
I think it's like a 5. It's not something I'm rushing to do. I think overall there's enough moments in these playoffs where I feel like he acquitted himself well. So I'm not in a rush to trade him, but I think financially, if you told me you could turn him into 2 guys who helped you,
yeah,
like then I'm a little intrigued. And I think it's just the reality of where they're at financially means he's the guy. It's like, I don't think anyone's rushing to trade for Gobert. You're not trading Ant. Nas doesn't make like a ton of money. It's like, that's kind of the guy that if you're going to do something here, he's the big salary. I thought about doing like 5 Towns trades, but the money's so much that I decided to do a finals list. But give me some teams.
All right. So here's my least favorite one. Then I'm gonna go. I've got 4 trade ideas for you. Karl-Anthony Towns to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle and Bojan Bogdanovic. You get a somewhat replacement from Towns in Randle. You don't lose in the scoring department. You lose a little bit defensively. You lose a little bit in terms of the injury and availability stuff, but that's why you have Naz Reid. And then you add Bogdanovic, who could space the floor around Ant for another year. And I don't love that. I think you have to probably throw in a pick or 2 if you're the Knicks, but that's why it's my least favorite one. But the Knicks might call and offer that.
I don't want to. I'm going to say this kindly because he's not like an unuseful player. I don't want to be the team trading for Julius Randle, and I just hate his fit on that team.
All right. Towns to Atlanta. for DeAndre Hunter,
Cool.
Bogdan Bogdanovic, and the number 1 pick.
Oh boy, where am I trading the number 1 pick? Is on my question because like
I'm using it. I'm getting another guy on a rookie scale salary that helps my books going forward.
Okay.
You don't have to use it on a star. You can go get Reed Shepherd or something, just like a guy I know what he's going to be.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, the lottery ticket point guard guy. Yeah, or the French Zach, whatever his name is.
Oh yeah, Rocher or whatever it is. Yeah, just somebody who has a immediately transferable skill who I can build, who fills a need that I could build around. Something like that. Number 1 pick in this draft isn't worth a ton, but that's probably why you're able to trade it for Karl-Anthony Towns. So, I don't love it, but it's out there. DeAndre Hunter at least is a win.
DeAndre Hunter, like Lois, not a guy. I'm another guy. I'm just like, he's making what? But like number 1 pick. If Atlanta's gonna keep running this, yeah, I could talk myself into that. It's bold at the very least.
Karl-Anthony Towns to Toronto for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and Grady Dick, and maybe some picks. Like
let me ask you one thing about before I'm more intrigued with the Atlanta one, gut take, just because of the number 1 pick. But maybe that's just like the branding of the number 1 pick. Let me also ask this though: are we gonna get a summer of more player for player trades with fewer picks? Because I've been thinking that with like Cavs trades, but also this Carl trade. It's like, could you see a world where it's just like his salary is so much, even if he's like nominally an all-star, where it's like kind of just maybe not a lot of picks involved, just because there's so much money?
Yes, and that's a great point, but also because nobody really likes this draft, so the picks in this draft aren't worth as much.
Yeah.
And you usually do want, like, as much as we love the future first-round picks and unprotected in 2029 and stuff, front offices want stuff now because they don't know that it's going to be employed in 2030. So you do need a little bit of a level of, I have something now and I have hope in the future. And the hope in the future stuff is just a seatbelt for a front office executive. The stuff now is what you're really working with. And the other part of it, too, is I think the league is wide open. Again, we're going to have 6 champions in 6 years. The idea of, hey, the Warriors are a dynasty, let's just wait this thing out, and let's Sam Presti this thing and just go get draft picks and be ready to pounce when this thing is over. There's teams that are ready to pounce right now, and I think that's why we're going to see such a crazy summer in general, or why some people are projecting it to be a crazy summer. I'm with you. I don't love the Toronto one. I just thought it might be interesting for them. Karl-Anthony Towns to the New Orleans Pelicans for C.J. McCollum, Larry Nance, and one of the young guys like Jordan Hawkins, I think, would work under the cap. So you get a 3-point shooter. You get McCollum as another ball handler whose contract is up in 2 years, and it's smaller, like $10 million, $15 million less than what Towns is making, not as long. And Larry Nance, who gives you just another kind of versatile body in the front court to toy around with if you're losing Towns. I don't hate it. It would be a little extreme to be giving another guard that much money in C.J. McCollum, but he does answer some of the questions that they have. I don't know that I do this if I'm the Wolves.
Yeah, you're skew a little small at guard then with like Conley and McCollum and like it's just then you're just like it's like I don't know how you're stacking all those guys up in a way that makes sense. But if I'm the Pelicans, I think I'm pretty into that.
Towns to Portland for Jeremy Grant and Malcolm Brogdon. And now you're probably starting Grant and McDaniels on the perimeter at your forward spots. Naz Reid still comes off the bench. You still got Gobert in the middle. And then you've got Brogdon as a third guard, who won 6th Man of the Year a couple of years ago.
Dominating, best shooting big man of all time, front court pairing in Portland. Championship Portland 2025.
And Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharp. I don't mind that as a young core for them.
Yeah, I actually don't like that. That might be my favorite one, Wes. Portland, Carlo to Portland.
That's why I left it. Save the best for last.
That's good. I like that one. That's my favorite one. You could probably get a pick out of that too from Portland. Yep. Although like it's kind of a wash on the money a little bit, even though Carl's probably making a little more.
It's almost exact money between if you combine Grant and Brogdon coming in and Towns going out. And by the way, because of their spot against the second apron, Minnesota cannot aggregate salaries in a trade going out, and they can't take back more money in a deal. So that's part of the constraints of what I was dealing with in making these fake trades. But if you're Minnesota, you add Grant to McDaniels. It gives you another wing defender, so you don't have to ask Anthony Edwards to guard Kyrie or Luka or guys or against teams like that. And you're really not losing much in the rebounding department. Minnesota's quietly not a great rebounding team. Jeremy Grant, not a great rebounder despite his size, but a guy who can go get a bucket and handle the ball a little bit, and Brogdon adds that other guy, and you could still go big with the Naz Reid Gobert pairing when you're playing Denver. So,
yeah, I like it. I know if I'm rushing out to do any of those, but I like the Hawks one. I like the Portland one. Those are my two favorites.
Yeah, I bet if these other teams called Minnesota with any of these deals, they would probably just say, we're just not ready to make that decision yet. But if this is still on the table in a year, we'll think about it.
Yeah. But this to bring this full circle with them. What if Tim Conley's not the one making the decision and it's someone who didn't build? It's like, what if it's like we don't know. Like that's maybe the bigger variable than the court stuff. It's like it's Tim Conley who built this team is not the one doing this. Mm-hmm. Then who knows?
Yep.
Who could be in charge? I don't know. What a summer. I can't wait. NBA summer is always fun. This feels like it's going to be a particularly weird one, Wes. Mm-hmm. Pretty excited.
Same.
Pretty excited. We're going to end there, though. Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks versus Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics, the NBA Finals. That's coming up. We'll preview that in a bunch of ways coming up on next week's Just Basketball shows. We'll be back with you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Myself, Wes, Brendan Clean coming at you 3 times a week. Use promo code JustBasketball at BetMGM. You deposit $10 and place your first wager in any game, and you get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if that bet loses. We'll make finals picks, preview the X's and O's, preview the X factors, talk about all the storylines going into the finals next week. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the hoops. It's Just Basketball show. Be well, everyone. Have a great weekend.